highly recommend Ms. Hicks. Her books, her CDs are encouraging.
I bought her book, A Hill to Climb. She's a very inspirational speaker.
And I look forward to one day being able to work with her. Your power lies within you. Let it loose.
And now let's welcome your host of the new Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour, Louise Hicks. In this episode, Renewing of the Black Mind, Self-Awakening.
Hello, world. How's everybody doing today? This is Louise Hicks, your host of Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you all for joining today. I appreciate it. And it's such a beautiful day. We've had some pretty bad weather here in Texas, but today is bright and sunny. So hope that everybody is well, and we're going to have a great time today. Last week, we talked about what do you want? You can have it, and you can have it. This week, our show is about renewing of the Black mind, self-awakening. Again, renewing of the Black mind, self-awakening. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And oftentimes we think about what's going on, and I've spoken before about the what this show is really all about and the priority of our show. The priority is to address us as Black people and some of the issues that we are having, and figure out some solutions to some of the issues that we're having. So with that said, let's move forward on what and how we're going to move ourselves forward as Black people, because we know there's so much going on in the world. And just this past week, we had the Minnesota issue with the killing of a young Black man, which was so sad. And also the Whoopi Goldberg incident, where she has been banned from her show for a couple of weeks, The View. So there's so much going on in our society. And we as Black people need to figure out our issues, because we should be our own priority. As they say, charity starts at home. And as a Black woman, that is my intent, to start the charity at home with us as Black people, and to share and inspire you going to inspire me, so that we can come together in unity, because there is definitely too much divide within our community. Today, what we're going to do is jump into this book. The book, and I'm sure some of you have read it, some of you may not have read it, the Willie Lynch letter, The Making of a Slave. That's what we're going to be talking about. Here's the book here, the Willie Lynch letter, The Making of a Slave. Now, there's been some talk that this Willie Lynch never existed, that Willie Lynch is a fictitious person, and that's okay, because this is really not about the person Willie Lynch. Our show today is about the experience of the book, the Willie Lynch letter, The Making of a Slave. That's what we're going to be discussing. So I'm going to start reading. We're going to talk about it. We're going to probably spend a couple of shows talking about it, because I'm going to give you all an opportunity to chime in and give your opinion of what we're reading and your perspective on it. So again, it is not about the letter and who wrote it, whether Willie Lynch existed back then or not. It's about what's going on today. And this book really depicts back then, fast forward, it depicts what's going on now, because some of the same atrocities that went on back then, they're still going on. And as I reflect, look at the George Floyd murder, the killing. As I mentioned before, I couldn't even look at that initially because it was too traumatizing for me. So imagine what our ancestors went through when they were so traumatized, being raped, mutilated, castrated, hung, all kinds of atrocities. And that's what this Willie Lynch is about. We still have a lot of Willie Lynches out here today. They didn't just go away, whether he's fictitious or real. So the first page here says, the first Africans in America arrived through Jamestown, Virginia in 1619 as indentured labor or servants. From about 1619 to 1640, the laws throughout Europe and the Americas removed all humanity, individuality from abducted Africans and named them property. Can you imagine that? Named us property. This is in the 17th century. The US Supreme Court and Chief Justices like Roger B. Taney ensured that the law did not protect slaves, but imbued their white oppressors who physically, mentally, and psychologically abused them with full supremacy. No Negro, whether slave or free, could ever be considered a citizen of the United States, the Honorable Judge wrote. In 1640, Maryland became the first colony to institutionalize slavery in America. And in 1641, Massachusetts, in its written legislation titled Body of Liberties, stated that bondage was legal servitude. At that moment, changing the status of the African hostages to automatic chattel slaves that could be bought and sold at the discretion of their white owners. Okay, that's just a preview of what was going on initially that brought about this book. And just imagine that you didn't have any freedom. This is what this preview is telling us. We had no freedom. We were property. We were not even considered human beings. We were considered the property of the white slave owners. And to some extent, that is still in force today, where some of us are considered property. And that's the white mindset, that some of us are still considered property, which is sad. So that's the white privilege, the white supremacist society that we're living in today. With us becoming personal possessions or property, we were deemed 3/5 of a person. That's how we were viewed and looked at, unfortunately. So now let's get into the letter itself. It says, "Gentlemen, I greet you here on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord, 1712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, for bringing me here. I am here to help you solve some of your problems with slaves. Your invitation reached me on my modest plantation in the West Indies, where I have experimented with some of the newest and still the oldest methods for control of slaves. Ancient Rome would envy us if my program is implemented." So here you can see, this is really about the experience, the atrocities. This is the Willie Lynch person implementing a program to keep us in our place, which is still in force today. whether it be employment, housing, education. We know that this still exists today. So let's go ahead and read a couple more pages. As our boat sailed south on the James River, named for our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish, I saw enough to know that your problem is not unique. While Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its old highway in great numbers, you here are using the tree and the rope on occasion. I caught the whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple of miles back. You are not only losing valuable stock by hangings, you are having uprisings. Slaves are running away. Your crops are sometimes left in the fields too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires. Your animals are killed. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are? I do not need to elaborate. I am not here to enumerate your problems. I am here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your Black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. So what I just read is Willie Lynch, whether fictitious or not, is using the Bible to enslave us. So we're going to use the Bible to change our mindset, because there's so much there that we can use to renew our minds. And as I mentioned, the topic for today is renewing of the Black mind, self-awakening. We're going to get to the root cause of what's going on with us today. And that root cause is using this book to identify how we got to where we are today, why we are so divided, why we are economically oppressed. In other words, this was the great white hope helping other Willie Lynches to enslave us, create a program to keep us in our place, and telling them that hanging is not the right way to do it because you're losing profitable property when you're hanging them. So let's put the fear in them. Put the fear in them. And when you put the fear in them, you won't have this rebellious behavior to contend with. What they did by trying to put the fear in us was that has continued, as they said, 300 years or more. And that is really what is happening. A lot of us still have that fear, and we need to change our mindset. We went from the slavery era to the Jim Crow era, where they broke up a lot of our families. Then we went to so much of the mass incarcerations, the drug addictions, and who bring the drugs into our country? Not us, because we don't have the power to do that. So we know that this is through white privilege, white supremacy, that all of these drugs are brought into America. And we, as Black people, indulge ourselves in it, which is one of our problems as well. And then this is what has created the division among us, the self-hate, the Black on Black crime. So let's move forward in the reading. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. So now what is that telling you? About the power of fear. And what did God tell us? God did not give us the power of fear. God gave us the power of love and of a sound mind, but not the power of fear. And that's what we got to understand and recognize, and why we need to get to the root cause of what has led us and put us in the position that we're in today. And again, I thank you all for joining, and I'm going to read a little bit more, and then we're going to have a discussion about this. So one of the questions I want you to think about is, why would anyone want to be the subject of rape, brutal castrations, lack of love, lack of respect, treated as not even a whole person, the psychological impact that this had to have had on our ancestors, like it has on us today, all the lynchings that went on. And this Willie Lynch letter is telling you that they shouldn't be lynching, they should be putting the fear in us, because you lose profitable property when you lynch. Okay, so now let's read a little further here. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. On top of my list is age, but it is there only because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There's intelligence, size, sex, status on plantation, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley, on a hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust now is stronger than trust. And envy is stronger than adulteration, respect, or admiration. Goes on further to say, the Black slave, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old Black male versus the young Black male, and the young Black male against the old Black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slaves versus the dark-skinned slaves. You must also have your white servants and overseers distrust all Blacks, but it is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Willie Lynch letter goes on to say, gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. Thank you, gentlemen. So in reading this, as you can see, the plan was to put together a program to keep us in our place for thousands of years. They said hundreds and even mentioned thousands. And as you can see, it's been over 400 years. And we as Black people are still making every attempt to navigate through this system of inequality when the Constitution says all men are created equal. However, does that apply to us as Black people? Think about it. Think about it. The division, the lack of unity, the programming, the lack of respect. It's all about their power, their control, their conquering, and their killing us, the genocide upon the Black ethnic group. They wanted to pit us young versus old, light skin versus dark skin. In every aspect of who we are, this white privilege, white supremacist society made every attempt to destroy our minds, to destroy us as a people unified together to make progress in this American society when we were brought over as slaves that continued within the Jim Crow era, and went on to the incarceration of our Black men, women, even children. Just think about it, what I just read. And let me ask you, did anyone see the movie Judas and the Black Messiah? What I just read is somewhat a depiction of what went on in that movie, the division that caused this innocent man to be killed. Fred Hampton in the movie, who was only making every attempt to unify our people, and not just our people. He wanted everyone to have an understanding of the why this world is full of hate, divisiveness, that shouldn't be if all men are created equal. So with that said, the movie was really propelling. It was an eye-opener for some that may not have known about what happened with Fred Hampton. If you didn't live in that era, I lived in that era when a lot of these things happened because of when I was born, 1951. So I've seen a lot, I've experienced a lot, and I know a lot of you have. However, some of the young people who will be chiming in, listening to this, have not experienced a lot of these atrocities that have gone on. Let's do some discussion. I don't want to read too far without giving you guys an opportunity to speak and participate. So does anyone want to unmute and have some comments about what we've talked about? Because if you do, you can go ahead and do that. And we're open to listen to what you have to say. Did I hear someone want to speak?
Yeah, it's me, William.
Okay, go ahead,
Yeah,
William.
I just want to chime in and just say that you're absolutely right. I think that what's going on in the world, and then especially in the Black community, there needs to be a change of the way we think. And I think a lot of especially the guys, we're walking around in a state of mind that we don't even realize. We do things against each other and think that is being the right thing to do. We are confused about who is for us and who's against us, who's really for us and who's against us, even though we say we are aware of it, but that's not shown. And I think that this guy, Willie Lynch, was a real person. And I think he came up with a strategy in his time to develop and control Black people by controlling the mother, because she had control of the offsprings. And he felt like if he can change her way of thinking, he can change every child she has going forward, which would help his cause. And, changing the way Black people thought and behaved. And so I just think it's a good start. It's a good subject. And going forward, we need to change the way we think, because it is said, so as a man thinking, and that's a woman too, so is he. So, and we can see, the damage. We can see the causes. We put our values in the wrong places, and we are programmed to think what is successful, and maybe it's not the real meaning of success. So, thank you.
Thank you, William, for those comments. And I wholeheartedly agree with everything you have said. And you're absolutely correct. And William is my husband, you guys, he and I do have discussions about what's going on today. And we talk about these things because it's important. We talk to our children about it and our grandchildren, because this is so important that we share these things with our children and our grandchildren and have them to chime in to help us to understand how we need to do and what we need to do with our minds, because it's so important. And that's why I chose this subject, renewing the Black mind, self-awakening, because until we do that, we are going to have issues with our community as a whole and the killing of each other. We have to get to the root cause. So once we get to the root cause and start recognizing and realizing the self-hate, the hate of each other, the killing of each other, it's not going to stop. And it's by design. It's totally by design. So that's what we have to recognize and realize. So I'm going to read a little bit more, unless someone else would like to comment. If you would, please do.
I want to say something.
Sure. Go ahead, Robin.
Like you said, it's by design. And Black on Black killing and robbing, and it comes from the slavery, because like you said, it's all about distrust. Okay. And it's continued. Black people don't trust Black people. Black people are killing. They don't want you to have more than they have. It's really disgusting, and we just can't win for losing. And we need to renew our mind and open up and see that. We need to take care of each other, because the white man, he's bringing us down right in front of our faces, and we don't even see it.
Thank you so much for that, Robin, because what you said is profound. And I agree. A lot of us don't see it because we don't understand the root cause of where it came from. It came from slavery. And until we have that renewing of our minds and recognize what's going on, it will continue. We will continue to rob from each other, kill each other. And we complain about the police killing us, which we should, because the police, they're murdering us right in front of our faces with the backs turned on them. That's because of white privilege and white supremacy. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we just had a murder in Minnesota, Amar Locke. I don't know all the details of it. However, it was a killing of a young man. I believe he was in his early 20s. So we have to have that renewing of our minds. And we need to stop killing one another, of all people, because no one in this country have suffered the atrocities that we suffered, our ancestors in slavery. And we are still going through a lot of these atrocities, as you saw right in front of our eyes. A man being murdered, George Floyd. I couldn't even watch it initially. And we've been traumatized due to the experiences of the Willie Lynch letter. That's why I'm taking the time out to read it. And I know some of us as Black people have never read this, may not have ever heard about the Willie Lynch letter. And if you haven't, I would suggest that you order the book and read it for yourself and allow yourself to do some self-analysis of the why and the root cause of what's going on with us. And I'd like to mention Dr. Joy DeGruy. I've watched several of her speeches. She's either a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I believe she's a psychologist. And she talks about this. She talks about the mental health of our people, how we never had the healing of those atrocities that happened to us. And they've gone on for generations. So if you haven't had healing, until you have that renewing of your mind and get to the root cause, as William has spoken and Robin has spoken, we're going to continue to have in our Black communities issues that we must address as Black people so that we can become whole. It's so important that we have the love, the respect for one another. Know who you are. That's so important, so that we can sharpen each other's tools. That's so important. So with that said, I'm going to read a little bit more. Okay, this part here says, let's make a slave. And this book is not a long book. You can read it in 10 or 15 minutes if you're just reading it straight through. However, we're stopping and we're analyzing. So let's make a slave. The origin and development of a social being called the Negro. Let us make a slave. What do we need? First of all, we need a Black nigger man, a pregnant nigger woman, and her baby nigger boy. Second, we will use the same basic principle that we use in breaking a horse, combined with some more sustaining factors. We reduce them from their natural state in nature, whereas nature provides them with the natural capacity to take care of their needs and the needs of their offspring. We break that natural string of independence from them and thereby create a dependency state so that we may be able to get from them useful production for our business and pleasure. So let's stop for a moment here and think about this. Their main focus, as they said first, was to take a nigger man. Second, to take a nigger woman. And you're going to use her nigger baby boy. So their primary focus initially was on our men. And William spoke to this. And what do we see today? The primary focus is still on our Black men to either kill us or incarcerate us, or perhaps maim us for the rest of our lives so that we are no good to anybody. How were they going to do this? Through the Black female. So they're going to use us, our ancestors, the females, the women, to orchestrate these atrocities upon our entire ethnic group. This is how you get to the root cause of what's going on. And it's still going on, as Robin stated, and William. Therefore, that's why I chose this topic, renewing of the Black mind, self-awakening. We have to awaken to the root cause of what's going on, because it's still going on today. It's still happening. And to compare us to the breaking of a horse, we're human beings, we're not animals. However, our Constitution deemed us as 3/5 of a person, yet they come back and say all men are created equal. However, their intent was exclusive of the Black human being. We are to be excluded from that all men are created equal. However, from God's perspective, we know that that is not true, because God said he's given us a sound mind, has not given us the spirit of fear. And that's what we have to recognize. We have to take away from our brain here that enslaved mentality so that we can be whole and love ourselves. And we won't be killing up each other. We will love ourselves. Therefore, we will have the capability to love one another. That's what we have to do. And this was done for their economical well-being and pleasure. And when they say pleasure, what do you think that pleasure was? That pleasure was, as they say here, control that nigger man, use that nigger woman, and that nigger boy. Their pleasure to control so that they could rape our ancestors, the Black woman, castrate the Black man, rape the Black man as well, and do all of this in front of each other. You take them, indoctrinate, program so that we have all the power. That was their intent, and it still is. As you can see what's going on today. Who has the power? Look at what happened to Whoopi Goldberg. She's suspended, like, go to your room because you said the wrong thing. But we're supposed to have freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. So what happened to that freedom of speech? We weren't supposed to be in our natural state. So what does that tell you? Our natural state is about love. That's our natural state. And we're one of the most forgiving people on the planet as Black people. But we are to be taken out of our natural state and put in a state of dependency, whereas our natural state was independence, with our Black men as our leaders, protecting us. So that was to be taken away from us, to make our Black men feminine. And we see a lot of that today, the same thing going on. Our Black men are strong men. Strong men. Family men. We have so many Black men out here that are still strong, taking care of their families, protecting their families. However, society would want you to believe differently. The white supremacist society, the white privileged society, they would want you to think that all Black men are still in that dependent state of mind that they so carefully through the Willie Lynch experience to have us to stay that way. But that's not the case. And when that's not the case, it creates an issue for the white society, the white privileged society, the white supremacy society, because they want us to stay that way. However, that's not happening. It's not happening due to self-awakening, the renewing of the Black mind. So we have to continue on that path, and we have to break down the root cause, especially with a lot of our young people, because they don't have, some of them, the wisdom and the understanding of the why, the root cause of why we're in a state of chaos, lack of self-love, the Black on Black crime. So we have to get it together, and we are doing that through so many avenues. And I talk about this quite a bit, and I'm going to share with you this book, Black Labor, White Wealth. And as I spoke with you, I've shared with you that Dr.BoyceWatkins is reading this book with an audience. This book is by Dr. Claude Anderson. I've gone to his seminar. I've taken pictures with Dr. Anderson. I've shared it on my promo videos. And this book I read back in the 1990s, Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson. And I'm so happy that Dr. BoyceWatkins has taken it up on himself and uses his time to share and to have interviews with Dr. Claude Anderson. Because this is powerful, and also Powernomics is powerful. That's another book by Dr. Claude Anderson. So I'm grateful for that. And I want to share something with you quickly, and then I'm going to allow you guys to say some more comments if you want to add anything else. I had, if you can see this, it's called Elementary Genocide. Elementary Genocide. This is a video by Raheem Shabazz, and I had him on my show, Aimed to Purpose, the radio show, some time ago. This is a movie, he produced this, and it's called Elementary Genocide, the school to prison pipeline. Why do you think they're building more prisons than school? Because this is where they want our people to be. They want us to be in the prison system, incarcerated. That's how you get enslaved again, free labor. And that's what's happening today. So I'm going to stop reading, and we'll start again next week, exploring the Willie Lynch letter, the making of a slave. We talked about the root cause and why we are in the situation we're in today. That's so important that we express the why. That's why I decided to focus my attention on this book, the Willie Lynch letter, whether it's fictitious or whether he's a real character, we do know that there's Willie Lynches around today also. And the making of a slave, it's still around because that's what our white supremacist society has attempted to do to us today. So why do you think they are building more prisons than schools? That's why I enjoyed having Raheem Shabazz on my show. So this is an excellent documentary that you can get and just watch it with your children. Elementary genocide, the school to the prison pipeline. And I repeated that because it's so vital. When Raheem Shabazz was on my show, we talked quite extensively about why this society is building more prisons than schools. Although our school system here in America really does not teach us our history. We have to teach our own children our history. And that goes back to a lot of documentaries that are out here that you can go and get and review and find out about what's going on within our Black community and the root cause and what we can do to get ourselves in charge of our own communities. So with that said, before I close the show for today, I really would like to get some comments back from you guys that's still in the Zoom with us. And I know Robin is still here and Norma, I believe, is still here. So do you guys have any comments that you'd like to make based on what we've done today? We've been reading the Willie Lynch letter, as I said, the making of a slave. We want to get to the root cause. So you can unmute yourself and you can speak about or comment on what we've discussed today so far. And we'll get more into the Willie Lynch letter on our next Sunday's show.
This is Norma. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Norma.
Hi
Thank
there,
you.
Robin.
Thank you for chiming
Thank you for
in
allowing
today.
me. Well, thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speaking on behalf of Aim to Purpose. And I was, as I listened to so many subject matters that you brought forth of the Willie Lynch letter, it takes you back from the beginning, which you did, and that is from slavery. And the thing was that when you spoke about the Bible, I'm just going to go just preview. Well, being in that said, you know, they did not teach our people how to read, so they relied upon the master words. And until they got that knowledge to know better and understand that word, and then too, we have to understand we spoke in our own language that the master did not understand, but we understood. Now I'm proving that coming forward to looking at today, we have two democracies. We got the white democracy and we got the Black democracy. And in this white democracy, they are plaguing and still pushing it through our corporate vehicle, be it with big companies, with the police department, and good examples that we are having in our school system. And I'm quite sure that's probably the case in other school systems that they have policing. Now, having a policeman is one good thing because the way this generation has changed. But however, when you have a policeman who's taking over the authority of what the school system, what the principal and administrators are required to do, they are actually putting our kids in prison as we speak, as they learn. And as you said, they're not teaching the true story of Black history. And they're challenging our kids through a lot of language that is not edible. And when I say that, it's not feeding the kids' minds. They're saying what they want the kids to hear. And there today, children are challenging that. With that said, that's something that we have to do. We have to challenge that, bring that policing in a reform system where they don't have to be on campus, but understand what your role is. And a lot of police don't know their role when it comes to children, especially children of color. Now I'm gonna move on forward to today's prisoners. We got more of us in prison than we have men outside this world.
Mhm.
And that is because of the system. They have corporate, again, putting back to corporate. The system does what they do, contract out, contract to go build a facility, and that's where they place our people. And going back into the old days, they did that, called the chain gang.
Mm.
So what we have to do is teach our children as well as ourselves to be it's not smart anymore, because we are smart. It's intelligence. Know that our intelligence of who we are, and bring that forth to every child, not only your child, but the children that are out there who are lost. And that's sometimes through mental health, through abusive, domestic abuse, because they too, the mother, father, or mother particularly, may not know any better because she wasn't taught. That doesn't make her a bad mother, but teach them their way so they know how to live in this world and make a change. And I have so much I wanted to deliver in this, that because it's just an area of mine too that I appreciate, Louise, bringing forth the truth. Exactly what she spoke about, Whoopi, and that really caught my eye too. And they use the system on words. This is a free country, supposed to be free of speech, but yet you use the word evil, and then you lost your freedom of speech.
Yes,
And yet
absolutely.
they can come and say these things. But to say all this is that, again, as I said, we have to change this, and we can change it and make it to where we are one according to the Constitution. Thank you
Yes.
so much, and I will look forward to the next episode of next week. Thank you again, Louise and Robin.
You're welcome. And thank you for those comments, because what you're saying is so appropriate in healing for us and bringing us together in unity. That is so important. And that's why it's important to teach our children, to give them the knowledge and information that they need so that we can build our own empires and we don't have to depend on anybody else. We have trillions of dollars running through our community, and we have to learn how to spend our money. So once we get done with this Willie Lynch letter, which is all about the experience and the root cause of why we as Black people and a Black community, over 40 million of us in America, are going through some of the issues that we have today. And it's all by design.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important
Yes,
thing.
it is.
It's by design. So with that
Yes.
said, I know it's supposed to be an hour show, but this is so vital that we get this information out until we're going a little bit over an hour, and it's okay. And next week, we're gonna start on the next part of the Willie Lynch letter, the making of a slave, so we can get to the root cause. Robin, do you have any comments before we close today? And today, before you start, our topic is renewing of the Black mind, self-awakening. And again, this is Louise Hicks, your host of Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour. So Robin, if you have anything you'd like to comment on based on everything we've talked about today.
Well, what Norma was saying about our kids, and these teachers are not teaching them the true history of our Black people, because they don't know the history, okay? And the ones that's old enough, like you said, they're gonna tell us what they want you to hear, because they the ones that kept us down with the slavery from the beginning of time. And another thing I want to say is, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. What's really sad is, as far as bringing a community together, why you got to kill a Black man to bring the community together just to tell them to stop killing our people. Okay? Just like Amir, the young man who got shot. You got thousands and thousands of people pulling together because they killed this Black man. And then
Mm-hmm.
Floyd, millions of people walking the streets, okay? Black Lives Matter. But we have to find better ways to bring our community together, okay? Empower each other, uplift each other. Don't let it be something bad all the time. Let it be something good, you know? That's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much all I have to say right now.
Thank you for that, Robin. And you are so right. We have to do something different, because when
Yeah.
you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, you're getting the same results. And it's been such a long time. I mean, over 400 years, and we are still having these issues with our community, the Black community. And believe me, there are self-awakening Black people out here now that are helping us to better understand what is going on with us and what we need to do. Like I mentioned, the reading of the book, Black Labor, White Wealth, that Dr. BoyceWatkins is doing with an audience. That is so vital that we do that and analyze. And he brings in Dr. Claude Anderson, whom I met and went to his seminar. Like I said, it's so important that we continue to do what we're doing, because if we don't do it, who is going to do it? How will our children get the resources that they need in order to navigate ourselves through this community of everything that's happening to us today? We need that. We must take charge of our own lives. That's the only way we're going to do it. We have to build our own empires, as I mentioned earlier. We have trillions of dollars running through our Black hands, and that includes the over 40 million of Black people in America. What are we doing with those trillions of dollars? Are we spending our money wisely? Are we building our own empires? We have communities where we don't even have decent grocery stores, but we have lots of liquor stores. Do you think that's a coincidence? No, it's not. That's all by design too, where we have Black communities with more liquor stores, and they keep wanting to add more, and you don't have decent grocery stores that you can go to and buy wholesome food to nourish our bodies, to nourish our spirit, to nourish our mind with intellectual growth, emotional growth, economic growth. We need all of those, the intellect, the emotional, the economic, to make us whole. So that's what we're going to be working on. And next week, we will be further discussing the Willie Lynch letter, The Making of a Slave. So if you can, go out and buy the book, read it. You can analyze it, learn from it to see that Willie Lynch still exists today, even though some say that's a fictitious character. It doesn't really matter because it's about the experience, as I mentioned. And by all means, I mentioned the Black Labor, White Wealth. Buy that book and read it. I read it in the 90s. Elementary Genocide. Get the documentary by Raheem Shabazz and review it, view it with your children. That's how we learn, because they're not going to teach it to you in the American school system. You're not going to learn. And it's so interesting how lately books are being banned because many are saying some ears are too delicate, the white ears, to hear or to read some of the atrocities that Black people have suffered and still suffering. So what about our ears? What about having to escort a little elementary school girl to an integrated school? These are some of the, back in the, I think it was the 50s or the 60s, maybe the 60s. And I remember these things because I was born in 1951 and I will be 71 in a month or so. So I've seen a lot. So let's pull it all together, our Black community. Let's love self. Self-love comes first, because if you don't have self-love, how can you love someone else? So let's do the self-love so we can love one another. We won't kill up each other. And I want to thank Robin. William was in, Norma, for speaking, expressing your thoughts, because that's so important. And we're going to, if you had one other comment you want to make, you can make it, and then we're going to pick up next week. So be sure and join us for Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour, where we will continue to read Renewing of the Black Mind, Self-Awakening next week as well. And we're going to continue with our discussion, discovering the root cause of why, the why. So anyone, if you guys want to make a comment, my two guests are still here.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
I just really enjoyed watching and listening and talking to you. This is my first time, and I really enjoyed it. It's uplifting. I can't wait till next Sunday. And I think I'm gonna get the what's his name, Raheem Shabab. I'm gonna get that
Raheem Shabazz
documentary. I might be able to get that on TV. And I want to buy that book.
Black Labor, White Wealth.
No, not that one.
The Willie Lynch letter.
The
and
Willie Lynch. I
slave.
want that. Yeah.
By all means, get Black Labor, White Wealth. That's a book that should be read with our children by Dr. Claude Anderson. I will encourage everyone to have that in your library for your children, your grandchildren, generations to come. I have it. I have his autograph, because it's so vital that we understand our history. Dr. Claude Anderson has broken it down. Oh, great. Your son has
the book. Yes, he
does. Great. Tell Greg,
I think he got a video too.
Great, because Dr. Anderson is powerful. Dr. Boyce-Watkins is powerful. I chime in on the book reading from time to time with Dr. Boyce-Watkins, as well as I chime in on lots of Dr. Claude Anderson interviews. I've seen him in person, have pictures with him, spoken with him, and read the book, as I mentioned earlier, back in the 1990s. Can't express enough to read that book, and also Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. It's important that we as Black people come together. We got to stop this divide that's by design and build our own empire, so we don't have anybody else telling us, go to your room and shut up. We don't need that. So, and where's the freedom of speech? So I'm going to end with that. And thank you all again. Until next week, as I always say, your power lies within you. Until next week, this is Louise Hicks of Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour. And I'll see you all next Sunday. Thank you.